So S Shift Z will lock the Z axis and only scale along the X and Y. Now it may seem like it's actually shrinking along the Z axis, but that's just an illusion, because it is staying 2 units high. You can also lock the X axis, the Y axis, and so on. If you press S twice, there is no other function. But there's another type of scaling that I'll go over real quickly here. If you go into edit mode, press Alt S to scale along the normals. Now, in this case, it doesn't change much, or I think it doesn't. No, it still stays proportional. So in this case, it would be the same thing as pressing S. But depending on the case, like say you have a Suzanne. So let's delete this, add a Suzanne. Where is she? There you go. No, not a Taurus. A monkey. So right now, if I just rotate it 90 degrees. Oh, that's also something I forgot to mention. You can enter values while grabbing. So say you have like GX, you can snap using control and you can enter values. Same thing with scale and all the other functions. But say you press Alt S, it suddenly just turns into crap. And if you shrink it, it just, oh my god, that is creepy. So let's try and remove these eyes here because they're causing problems. Move them up the Z-axis. And if you press Alt S, it scales along the normals. Now, normals are the direction in which a face is facing. And by default, these are all facing outwards. So each one is scaling along its own axis. So it's making a mess. Yoda style. Okay, sorry, inside joke. So yeah, that's scale. It's another very basic tool, also very useful. So yeah. So next up is Extrude, which is another very basic, important tool when you're modeling. So to demonstrate this, let's go into edit mode and select these 4 vertices, like this. So Extrude is activated by the E key. Now in Blender 2.5, it automatically guesses what you're trying to extrude, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Just press E and move it along. If you're in 2.49, which chances are you are, you'll get a menu and just choose region. I'll talk about those different options later. So right now you can pretty much extrude it anywhere. It basically extends. Let me actually do a search for the definition of extrude. I've actually never looked it up. Form or shape by forcing through an opening. Okay. Yeah, that pretty much works. Except we're not actually forcing it through anything, we're just extending it. So maybe that doesn't really fit. But it's better description than what I came up with, which is nothing. But there's also a few things you can do with Extrude. Like, say you extrude this along the X-axis, which you can do. You can extrude it along the Y and the Z. So say you extrude it along the X-axis, or actually not move it at all. Just a second, let's restart. So just press E to extrude, then press S to scale it in, and it's not working right now, so just cancel by right-clicking, then just scale it in, and our extrusion is still there. Then extrude it again, then extrude it, escape, scale it in, extrude it back in, like over here, extrude it, scale it up, extrude it, right there. So right now we have this pretty interesting shape, and we've only done this using 3 tools really: extrude, scale, and grab. So very basic functions, but you can still create fairly complex shapes with it. This is not, of course, a complex shape, but it's still more complex than a cube. But yeah, that's Extrude. If you're in 2.49, you might get this menu, or you should get this menu as soon as you press E. You get region, individual faces, edges only, or vertices only. Now in 2.5, or actually 2.53, which is one I'm using, whoops, splash. So this is 2.5 beta 3 or 2.53 beta, and by default in 2.5 it automatically guesses what you're trying to extrude. In 2.49 you would automatically get this menu and you would have to choose. Now right now I have an entire face selected, like here. So if I press E, it automatically assumes that I want to extrude a region, which is the region I have selected. So, but you can actually have more control over this. Individual faces is not really applicable in this case unless I select everything. So if I press Alt E, individual faces, you get all these faces at the same time because it extrudes each individual one. So that's a very useful thing. Edges only will only extrude the edges, except I'm getting some problems here. There. If I press Alt E, edges only, it kind of looks a bit like a piece of Lego, at least to me. And Alt E, vertices only, will only extrude the vertices, obviously. But in 2.49 you get the Alt E menu by default when you press the E key. But in 2.5 it automatically tries to guess what you're trying to extrude. But if you want a bit more control over what you're trying to do, then choose Alt E. However, since I have nothing selected right now, there is nothing there. So that's fun. Context sensitive menus. So yeah, that's extrude. Same functions apply. The local axes, like this. Extrude X. Local X, which is not working. Oh, that's normal X. Okay, so it's not exactly the same. I don't really know what normal X is. I've actually never used that. But I'm guessing it's the X-axis of the normal of the face. Now, that seems a bit complicated to me for some reason. But I'll just leave it like that. So yeah, next up is delete. So let's go to delete stuff. So next up is delete and create face. Now I'm actually going to merge these two into one because they really go like hand in hand. Well, at least in most cases they do. But let's just get started here. In object mode, if you press X or delete, which brings up the delete menu, it just asks you if you want to delete the entire object. And in this case, it deletes the entire object. So if you undo that and go into edit mode, the options are a bit different. We still have this face selected, so if you press X or delete, depends on your preference or which hand you use on your keyboard. If you press X or delete, as I said, you get this menu with 7 options. You have vertices, edges, faces, all, edges and faces, only faces, and edge loop. Now, edge loop I'm actually going to talk about a bit later because it goes with loop cut, which is the next part. So I'll start with vertices. If you have these vertices selected, or actually just one, press X, delete vertices. Now it automatically deletes that vertex and by the same token deletes all edges connected to it and then the faces, because the faces need that vertex and that edge and so on. So it deletes all these other faces here, these 3, plus these edges. So it just clears this entire thing. Next in the list is edges, but since we only have one vertex here and not an edge selected, it doesn't do anything. So let's select another vertex here, not this one that is actually connected. So press X, delete edges. Now it deleted the edge, and it also cleared the faces over here because they needed that edge. So same thing applies to faces, except that it doesn't delete any faces, any edges, because it only deletes the face itself. There is an option. If you go into edges and faces, it leaves you with the vertices and no edges, no faces all around here. So I don't exactly know why that would actually be useful because I've never really used it.